Hi guys, and welcome to my build video for the Magicka Dragon Knight. I call it the Firecracker. Just before we go ahead and get started, I'm going to say that I don't have max CP, so there are things that I would probably throw points into, obviously, that I can't right now. Most of the time when I PvP with this, I'm in no CP campaigns, so it performs very, very well for that. I think honestly it would probably be even better in CP campaigns, but just throwing that out there. So this build is a pretty good balance of just enough sustain and just enough survivability to stay alive in a fight with a stupid amount of damage. Like, just stupid amount. Main strength of this build is that you're going to shred basically anybody else that's wearing light armor. It doesn't matter if they're blocking, doesn't matter if they have shields. It's just gonna tear them apart. Weaknesses for this, I would say honestly, people that have people that are really good at dropping your block and knowing that you rely on your block are going to give you a hard time for sure. Night Blades that will constantly spam fear, so like a Magicka Night Blade that constantly slots fear and just uses it over and over, going to be pretty annoying to deal with. You still can, and I can kind of give some examples on how. Other Dragon Knights that hit you with Fossilize, that's going to suck. Anything basically that's going to drop your block for a second, you're going to be hurting pretty well before you can grab it back up and get your heals back up. So this, just going to go ahead and jump on into the stats, and we'll go through the gear. It shouldn't be too long of a video. I'm running 2-piece Scoria right now. The head, all my big pieces except my shield, I've got Triglyph. So my head, my chest, my leg, those 3 pieces are all going to be Triglyphed. Everything, because of the nerf, and people aren't going to say that it's a nerf, they're going to say that it's a buff, but blocking definitely got a nerf this last patch. Because the glyphs were so good on the jewelry, the way that it's calculated now really honestly, in my opinion, feels like blocking is about probably 15 to 20% more costly. So right off the bat, just going to be honest, we're in full sturdy. Literally, we have no impen on anything. Our crit resistance is not terrible. I mean, we've got 1,000 that we cranked out from CP, but helmet's going to be Valken Scoria, shoulder piece is going to be Valken Scoria. We're running 1 heavy, 1 medium, and then 5-piece light. The gear that we're wearing on our body is going to be Shackle Breaker in light. Again, we've got this in sturdy and Triglyph. We've got light Shackle on the chest, the boots, and the pants. And again, all sturdy. If you can gold them, great. If not, whatever. The third set that we're using is this new set, Kalurian. Crazy good. It gives you so much spell crit that literally every other attack, every other spell that you're throwing at somebody is going to crit on someone. It's honestly, in my opinion, kind of broken. This proc says that it hits for 15k once at random every 10 seconds, anytime you hit someone with a direct damage ability. That, in PvP, on a Magicka Dragon Knight, is going to proc about every 10 seconds. This build, because our spell damage is only 1783, you're not going to really think that it's going to hit that hard, but it really does. We have so many different things going off at the same time that it's basically just too much for people to be able to deal with. So on gear, again, Shackle Breaker chest, we got sturdy. Again, all of this stuff is light. Kalurian, also sturdy. On our small pieces, we're running Magicka enchants for our glyphs. On our jewelry, this is blue. I will farm purple whenever I feel like actually running that instance. Right now it's pretty busted as fuck, but that's just me. Necklace, we have 1 shield glyph on it. I could probably, in CP campaigns, I could probably get rid of that and swap it out for spell damage or maybe a little bit more recovery. But in no CP, because because blocking is a little bit more costly in the long run, I have that on there. I feel like it helps quite a bit. Don't need more than 1 though. On my second one I have a reduced cost, pretty standard. Third, I have a Magicka recovery. Weapons, we've got 2 Shackle Breaker, both Nirnhoned. People are going to think that that's pretty dumb, but I actually found that you get more heals out of having a Nirnhoned sword on your back bar for your Coag than if you had a powered one. And it's more of a heal that you get by having the Nirnhoned than it prevents you from even getting if you were running defensive. So whatever, you don't have to do that. If you don't want it, you can change it. It's totally fine. Shield, we're running Magicka enchant on it, sturdy on both the front bar shield and the back bar. This could be gold, I just haven't changed it yet. If you're curious about my style, by the way, I'm running Scoria up here. I've got that covered up by a mask. The shoulders are Daedric. The chest is Minotaur, and then everything else is... actually, the gloves, I guess, are this Fang layer shit. And the belt is, but these two are Dramathra. For our stats, we're not sitting really too bad. Max Magicka, we're at 34,000. Magic recovery, 1625. Really not bad. The reason I can put up with having 1600 is I have a fucking tail. Argonian is bae. Fucking love being able to hit one button and just flushing all my resources, getting them all the way back to full. It's amazing. In PvP, we're at 26,400 on this bar. Health recovery doesn't mean anything. You never heal that way anyway. Stamina, we're not running Tri-Stat food in this, and we still have 14k because of the Shackle Breaker, which is why I chose that. I was running that last patch too, but this new patch's Kalurian shit is just too busted for me to not run, so whatever. Stamina recovery, it's actually not too bad. People don't think that would ever really mean anything on a block build, but it really kind of does. When you roll dodge, your stamina recovery can tick. When you go into mist form and you're running around in mist form, your stamina recovery can tick. So as our stamina is slowly dropping down, like when it's around here, like this is kind of the point where you want to do something about it. If it gets to about 40%, someone can CC you once, and after you break that, you're not going to have any more to block. Or they're going to hit you a few times until you're really low, then they're going to CC you, and you're going to be fucked. When I get around this point in my stamina, because again, this is mainly, I don't perma-block, but I do block a lot in this build. When I get that low on stamina, I'm looking at 3 different things. Can I misform? Do I have plenty of Magicka where I can misform around a little bit, let my stamina get back up? Are they not applying enough pressure where maybe I could weave in some heavy attacks to get my stamina back up that way? Is my ultimate ready? If so, I'll pop that. We get the passive, I think it's Earthen Heart. Yeah, here it is, Battle Roar. You get a shitload of your resources back every time you ult. So if my ultimate's back up, that'll give me tons of stamina. And because I'm Argonian, tripods are crazy good. If I don't really have a way that I can show it here without taking damage, but if my health is about half and my Magicka is about half and my stamina is about half, I drink one of these and all 3 of those things just completely top off again. It's fantastic. Argonians get this really sexy passive that gives them... here, it gives you an extra 4,600 to all 3 of your stats anytime you drink a potion. So when you're drinking a Tri potion, very good. Going into what skills that I chose for this build, this is something that you're going to have to probably play around with to kind of get a feel for how you want to use it. This is just what I did because I wanted to be able to crank out the most amount of damage over times as possible. And also, I'm not running like Igneous Shield or anything. I'll kind of explain that. First skill that we've got on down here is Flame Lash. As a lot of DKs know, if you root something and then whip it, I guess it's not working on a skeleton. Probably not. No, it's not. Cool. If you root anything with this go right here, Burning Talons, or if you fossilize anything, it will apply a root after they're stunned. If you whip them twice, this will turn into Power Lash. And again, a lot of DKs know this already, but this is just to help out the people that don't really know what they're doing with the class yet. Where is it? So it says in here, targeting an off-balance enemy changes the ability to Power Lash, allowing you to lash an enemy with more intense flame to deal even more damage, stun them for 2 seconds, and you get a 20,000 heal over 4 seconds. It can happen every 3. The duration of time that's split up between, I'm pretty sure is new with this next patch, or this patch that just came out. It used to just be like 2 seconds, and it used to not stun them. But that heal is basically one of your 2 lifelines to stay alive in this build. If your health gets, I mean, that's something you should be using all the time in your rotation anyway, but if you're constantly lashing people and power lashing them, you're going to get tons of heals back without even trying in this build. Second one that I chose in here is Fossilize. Got to go with it. I prefer Fossilize over the Stone Fist because there's a lot of people out there that block. Stone Fist is really nice, don't get me wrong. If you can hit people at 28 meters with this thing, you can literally snipe them in Cyrodiil with it, and it gives you tons of stamina back. You can just constantly sit, and, you know, if you got tons of Magicka and you run low on stamina, you can hit this a few different times, and because of This passive right here, anytime you would cast it, you get about 1,000 stamina back. That's really nice. But Fossilized, and the way that I use Fossilized, just drains the shit out of people's stamina. I really like it for that. It's also really good for dropping block. So encases them in stone, drops them for 3 seconds, and afterwards they take a little bit of damage. It then snares them after the effect. So people have to CC break, then afterwards they have to roll out of it. So that's 2 different things that they're going to have to do that's going to mess up their stamina. So I prefer it because of that. Whereas with Stonefist, they can either block it, it doesn't stun them, or they just CC break, and then that's basically it. So third skill that I'm using here is Burning Embers. Bread and butter. It's every single Magic Dragon Knight's go-to damage over time skill. Does tons of damage over a long duration of time, and then really, really sexy, heals you for 78% of the damage that you've caused when the effect ends. So there have been times where I'm fighting people in this build where my health might get to like 30%, and then this will tick. It's done its full 10 seconds, and then it heals me because the effect ends, and it will literally just give me a full heal. And this isn't even like that buffed. This class relies a lot on a lot of different procs to do the majority of the damage for you. Like I said, again, our spell damage in here is only 1785. Again, that's unbuffed. If I used you know, that and that, it jumped up to about 2500. That's the spell damage glyph that we have on our weapon, and it's also the skill right here, which is Structured Entropy. It gives you major sorcery. So 2500 is not really that crazy, but we get so much damage out of our procs that it doesn't honestly even matter. Fourth skill that I chose was Engulfing Flames. I personally like this. A lot of people don't really like it that much. A lot of people prefer like slotting Igneous Shield in place of this to get a little bit more survivability. Totally can if you want to. I just like it because, again, it's another huge damage over time. It lasts a long time, so if you're fighting somebody that doesn't have Cleanse, you don't have to constantly sit there and like reapply your damage over time on them over and over. Also gives you 10% more damage from all fire attacks applied to them. Every single freaking skill that we're using here is basically fire, so that's going to help out a lot. As Blobs will say on his videos, Flames of Oblivion is super, super, super nice, especially for this build because it does shoot out in small bursts as you go. 1700 Magicka, it puts this little buff on you, this little fireball that floats around, and every 5 seconds it shoots out a little fireball toward it. I just hit 7500 on, you know, Skeleton Grand. This isn't in PvP, but in PvP that'll probably hit other people for about 3000 every single time it shoots a little fireball out. It's super, super nice. You cast it once, forget about it for 15 seconds, sits there and just beats the hell out of people. So that's really, really nice. Front bar, we've got Ferocious Leap. Super, super awesome ultimate. You can use it defensively if you're low on health. You hit this and it'll give you a little bit of a heal from your ultimate passive. Also gives you a huge shield that you can use to heal back up through. Knocks people on their ass too. A really good combo with this is get both of your damage over times on them. Use all of your damage over times on them. Hit them, or you swap to your back bar. Hit them once to get your weapon glyph. Hit them with your Structured Entropy, and then ultimate. That was 13.4k, and that wasn't even a crit. And again, that's really not even that crazy. So another thing that you can do, if you have the passives for the Mage Guild, which are down here, maybe Guild Mages right here. Might of the Guild. Anytime you cast Structured Entropy, it's going to give you Empower, so 20% more damage on your next direct damage attack, which would be Whip. Which could be your Burning Embers initial tick, and also it could be your ultimate. So really, really nice. Second bar, both of these are the same as they would be on our front bar. Again, this isn't gold just because I haven't got around to it. I'm still running Sturdy on the back bar. I'm still running Nirnhoned on the back bar as well. Again, I've explained why I run Nirnhoned on the back bar. I've tested it out a little bit, and again, you get more survivability actually out of having Nirnhoned than you would having having defensive or having like powered for more heals. You get more heals out of Nirnhoned anyway. So on the back bar, we've got Coagulating Blood. This, because we don't have a super, super, super large amount of Magicka or a super, super, super high amount of spell damage, our heal from this is kind of like a secondary heal. This is like if we need a quick panic button because some Nightblade just jumped on our ass and we're in Cyrodiil, and we want to like spam something a few times to heal us, I'll use Coagulating Blood for that. I don't really rely on Coagulating Blood to be my main source of healing this build, because the second that you stop putting out pressure on your opponents and start focusing on healing yourself, you've kind of already in itself given a huge part of that fight on over to your opponent, because they're just going to sit there and button mash you nonstop until you can't keep up on resources anymore. I also said that I explained why I don't run Igneous Shield on this patch, and that's because I don't find the major mending that you get from Igneous Shield to be worth not just using Coagulating Blood twice. So, for people that don't know the class, we have a skill here, Earthen Heart, called Obsidian Shield. This will morph into another one that also gives you it gives you Major Mending, which is a buff that increases your heals after you use it, and then like you get this little damage shield, which in a PvP really amounts to like basically nothing. Again, like if you look at the cost on this, is 3,500 for that. You'd have to use that before you would even run Coagulating Blood, and then you would get like basically another 25 to 30% depending on how your CP is built. That would buff this heal, and in my opinion, it's not worth it to run that and then this and eat up another slot than it is like if you're in a tight situation, just pop Coagulating Blood twice. So that's just my perspective, I guess. Second slot that we're using on this is Volatile Armor. We get our spikes, and it also applies a dot. Because we're running Scorias, that's going to be something else that's going to help proc that. We've got like 7, I think, different damage over times in this build. It's pretty ridiculous. Third skill that we're running in here, and another thing to kind of mention on this, gives us 5,200 to our resistances. Also really nice. We're in light armor, and with that buff up, we're at 23,000 spell resistance and 18,000 physical. Really not bad at all for running light armor, especially because we're going to be blocking all the time anyway. That's our main source of mitigation and staying alive. I personally, I had never had a situation come up where I'm like, oh, damn, if I only had a little bit more resistance, I would have made it. So, third skill that we're using in here is Mist. Some people really like this, some people really don't. Because I run this build in Cyrodiil, running around like fighting 1v2s and 1v3s and sometimes 1v4s, because I 1vx in this build, I personally love Mist for it. Like, if something you don't have really any gap closer on this at all other than your Dragon Leap. So if you're sitting here wailing on somebody, and say he's a sorcerer and he just teleports away, right? The only thing that you can do if you don't run Mist is sit here and sprint toward him, and it's going to eat the shit out of your stamina, which is your lifeline in this build. Your stamina is basically everything. You run out of stamina once, you're going to die. So I like using Mist because if something happens where I get rooted and someone takes off running, I can pop into Mist. That will break all my crowd controls. You still move the same speed as if you're sprinting, and it's not eating up any of your stamina. Because we have a decent amount of Magicka in this build, I prefer to rather use our Magicka to catch up with people than our stamina to do the same thing. So that's why I slot Mist. I personally think that's an amazing tool in Cyrodiil. Fourth skill that we have on our back bar is Burning Talons. I don't run Choking Talons in this build because, again, I'm just trying to maximize the amount of damage that we can get. Choking Talons, which is the other morph, gives you Minor Maim, which is really nice. It prevents them from doing an additional, like, if you had Choking Talons on, it'd debuff their damage by like 15%. Yeah, it's not bad. I just prefer this because it's a little bit more damage. Because we have so many different fucking damage over times where any of them can proc Scorias, it's just fantastic. You get so many different damage over times ticking them at the same time. If you're fighting somebody that has a bunch of shields, right, like a Magicka Nightblade or like a squishy little Templar with like a bunch of like shield stacking that they're doing, or a sorcerer that's shield stacking, by the time you get all of your different damage over times on them, their shields are just going to die on their own before they can ever hit their full time frame. Something that a lot of people rely on to stay alive is in Restoration, there's this little skill right here called Steadfast Ward, and this morphs into another one that basically when the duration runs out, it gives them a huge heal. It looks like this little, like I guess a sparkly, like reddish shield around them. It's the only shield in the game that looks like red. If they use that on themselves and you don't break that shield before the duration is up, all the remaining stuff, all the remaining shield that's on there then turns into a heal and buffs them. So with how many different damage over times that we have in this build, that's never really an issue. All those shields just basically eat themselves up. And then last one I brought up earlier, Structured Entropy. It's our source for major sorcery. Also a little bit of a damage over time, lasts really long too, which is also super nice. And I use that for a little bit more max health on our back bar, which is nice. It scales well with coagulating blood because this heals you 33% of your missing health. That amount of your missing health is going to be larger if you have a larger health pool. So I kind of like that for that reason. Devouring Swarm, I slotted this on our back bar for our survivability tool in 1vx. It's actually really nice because, again, it's another damage over time. In PvP, if you have like 2 or 3 people that are trying to stay on you, because of how this build works, you can't rely on just holding right click and expecting to stay alive in this build. You've got to be crowd controlling people, you've got to be line of sighting people if you need to, you've got to be constantly thinking of what you can do to get your resources back up. There's a lot of multitasking when you play this, and it doesn't seem like that because for a lot of people it's going to piss them off. It's going to look like you're just sitting here and running around holding block. But there's a lot of stuff you have to be thinking about in order to stay alive. So, some of the rotations that I use just to kind of give you guys, I guess, an insight of my lineup. And again, you can change this. You can work it any way you want. My go-to lineup for this is before anything even starts. Say that we're going to start a duel. You want to duel somebody. Pop your Flames of Oblivion right off the bat. It's going to take 5 seconds for it to count down. So the second that someone accepts your request, if you pop Flames of Oblivion, you can see my little tracker over here. It's going to take 5 seconds before it's going to tick. And then right there, it's going to tick. It's going to shoot its first fireball. Then it's going to sit here and wait until it says 5 seconds. And bang, it's going to shoot its second one. So by hitting that one button, you're saving yourself work down the road. So Flames of Oblivion is always my first when I see somebody. I keep that buff running like 24/7. I don't overcast it. Again, you want to make sure that it runs out, and you can see down here at the bottom, if you don't have the buff timers, you can see down at the bottom how much time is left. But I Flames of Oblivion, I run up, or I mist up, in some cases I'll mist up, I'll pop my spikes, that applies damage over time to them. Scorias will usually proc at some point through there. I'm going to hit them with my Structured Entropy, I'm going to root them. The reason that I root them is it's right off the bat going to be something that's going to annoy the shit out of them. As a Dragon Knight, you have so many different tools to disable and disrupt people in combat that it's so fucking annoying for your opponent to have to deal with. So again, I'm going to run up, Flames of Oblivion's on, I'm going to spikes, Structured Entropy. I might do an auto attack in there real quick to see if I can proc my glyph, give myself a little bit of extra spell damage, not really important. Pop in my root. The second my roots are down, I'm going to rotate behind them, and I'm going to start hitting them with my other ones. So there's Burning Embers, and I'm going to hit them with my Engulfing Flames. And again, you can see Scoria's just sitting here proccing over and over and over. It's super nice. So full rotation in real time is going to look like this. You can see how many different damage over times we have just burning this guy alive. Right now, we have Flames of Oblivion. We've got this skill right here. There's 1. We've got this. There's 2. We've got this. Here's 3. We've got our spikes. That's 4. Our root. There's 5. Our Structured Entropy. There's 6. And if we really want to, we could pop our ultimate for Devouring Swarm, and that would be our 7th. So we have 7 different damage over times to just sit there and cook through whatever we're fighting. Again, if you're fighting someone that's relying a lot on block, right out of the gate before you do anything else, hit them with Fossilize. Start working through their stamina before they start working through theirs. If it's like a Magicka Dragon Knight versus another Magicka Dragon Knight, you just need to be hitting them with your shit before they hit you with their shit. It's kind of a frustrating duel, but that's just kind of the way it goes. Key kind of things to remember, anytime you root them, after I root them, they're going to roll out of it. And the second that they roll, you need to hit them with Fossilize. The reason that you do that is, even though they just broke out of the root, so if I hit him with this, and he rolls out over to the side, when you hit them with Fossilize, for whatever stupid reason, it resets the cooldown on their root timer. So you hit them with Fossilize, it's going to drop them to the ground, they're going to break free out of it, and the second that they do that, they're rooted again from your Fossilize. Then they have to roll again. Now after that, you'll probably have to wait like 4 or 5 seconds or so until you try to root them again. You just keep cycling through your different skills, reapplying all of your damage over time, making sure they're still up on people. So the main reason that I made this is this new set gives you a huge chunk of burst at like really no expense. I have tried running Burning Spellweave. I've tried running. I've got Sun in here. I've got Spinners in here. I've tried running all those sets, and honestly, even though like yeah, you'll have more spell damage, and yeah, you'll probably have more Magicka, it's less burst in the long run, which is all that really matters in PvP. In PvP, you want this tiny amount of time that you can push a ludicrous amount of damage through and kill your opponent before they can even react to pop a heal real quick. And that's really what this build specializes in. So really, really good for open world PvP. Stats, I don't think I went into it earlier. I explained all this stuff. You can see what our stats are here. Magicka into everything. Spell penetration in this build is 7,700. The reason that is that freaking high is we're in light armor and we're running the Lover Mundus. Now you can change that if you don't want. You can swap that on over to extra Magicka. You can swap it on over to more Magicka recovery if you want it. If you're not Argonian and you're having troubles like keeping up your Magicka recovery, go ahead and swap it. It's totally fine. The build will definitely still perform. I've found that you get more damage out of running the Lover Mundus, which gives you an additional amount of spell penetration, than you actually get if you run the Apprentice for spell damage, or if you run the other Mundus that gives you the 2k to your max Magicka. It's more damage. Take my word for it. I've tested it. Again, if you're having any sustain issues, you want to have a higher Magicka pool to run off of, or like maybe you do want a shield stack and you want to swap the build up a little bit, totally fine. Build more Magicka, your shields will be higher, you'll last a little bit longer to fight. It just will be a little less damage, and I've built everything in here to be just a retardedly large amount of damage. So in sustained fights, when you're fighting people and you're dropping all your skills and stuff on them, you have your Scorias, which is going to proc. Throw a few different damage over times on there. Eventually your Scorias is just going to proc for free. You're going to constantly have Scoria Meteors just dropping out of the sky and landing on them, doing tons of different damage, and you don't even have to try for that. There's one right there. 9,300. Again, this is a dummy. The other thing in for your Kalurian set, this in PvP will nuke your opponents for about 5 to 6k every single time it procs. So when you have Flames of Oblivion going, and this at the same time, and Scorias is dropping in, like, you're not even doing anything, and these people are getting hit stupidly hard. If you combine that with all the different damage over times that you're dropping on someone, it's really nice. The amount of damage that you get is super, super nice. We're a perma-block build on a Magicka DK, and even in PvE I can get this over to like 15, 16k single target. So, really nice. I went over the fact that I'm an Argonian, because Argonian's fucking amazing. We also get this, increases your healing done and healing received by 5%. That's actually 10% more heals on everything. You're receiving 5% more and you're applying 5% more at the same time. So that's also very, very good for staying alive in this build. I went over our glyphs on everything. Tri-stat on helmet, the chest, the legs, everything else that you're wearing, the glyph should be in Magicka. Again, we don't really have to push more stamina because we get a free 2k from our Shackle Breaker, and everything is going to be on sturdy. Again, the only thing that you really, really need to look out for in this build for staying alive is people that are going to be dropping your block. Either like Nightblades will drop Fear on you, Sorcerers will drop their skill. They've got a skill that like basically does the same thing as like Fossilize or Fear. It just drops you to the ground, you break out of it, and that's it. But if they time their burst around that, because we're not running any impen and we have 1,000 from our CP, if you're not blocking, you're going to get hit pretty hard, not going to lie. So keep an eye out for those classes. If you're fighting a Sorcerer, if you're fighting another Dragon Knight, if you're fighting a Nightblade, see if they've got Fear, see if they've got Rune Prison, see if they've got Fossilize, and just basically expect it. On Mundus, I said that we're running the Lover that gives us tons of spell penetration. This basically accounts, this is about I would say probably 14% more damage on everything, literally everything, just because we're in light armor and running this Mundus Stone. That's how strong spell penetration is. I didn't find a need to buff that any further in CP, just because if someone is in light armor and say they only have like 10,000, if they only have 10,000 resistances and you go like higher than that in spell penetration, like you've already used up all their armor anyway. I don't know. I haven't really tested out to see whether or not it's actually your resistances can go negative. I don't honestly know. If they can, great. You know, you can try it, but that's just how I run it. Potions, I run 3 different ones depending on the situation. Oh, food, by the way. Witch Mother's Potent Brew. Again, I mentioned earlier we're not running Tri-Stat because we, in this build, already have 14,300 stamina, which in my experience is enough to be able to survive on. For Magicka, or for our 3 different potions, I run Magicka if I need it. I constantly just drink potions in this build. Because we're Argonian, we get so much of a flush of resources every single time that we use one of these. I'm constantly chugging them. And anytime my potion's ready, if unless I'm at like 90% or something stupid like that, I won't drink it, but I'm constantly going through potions. I've got Magicka if I need Magicka, Stamina if I need Stamina, and then the Tripots. Tripots are super awesome. They're kind of expensive. They go for like 140 or something like that, I think. Where are they? Yeah, usually you can find people selling them for about 140 gold. Sometimes you can find them for cheaper. If you make them yourself, then awesome, more power to you. I never do any crafting, but that's just kind of me. Only other thing that we haven't gone over yet is our CP. Again, I'll say it right now. I'm not max CP level. I'm totally not. I've played this character for I'm 471. I've played my Magicka Dragonite for probably 430 of those champion levels, so I know what I'm doing in this class, but I don't have all the points yet. Now I'll explain what I would do if I had them. Starting off with the Tower Warlord, I would put this at 56, to be honest with you. I don't have the points yet, so it's at 45, but we're only going to be breaking free when our guard gets blocked or our guard gets dropped. If someone hits us with the Fossilize or those, the 3 skills that I said earlier that are going to kind of mess you up. Because of that, I would have this buffed up quite a bit. Over here we've got 56 and Arcanist. I would put a little... Actually, I'd probably keep Arcanist where it's at. I typically try not to go over 56, which is pretty much the standard anymore, unless like I've just basically got nowhere else to spend the points. So that's at 56. Over here in the Shadow, we've got Shadow Ward at 56. This in CP campaigns, if you're fighting like in Vivec or like in Shore, like you're in Cyrodiil in a CP campaign, because this gives you an additional 20% reduced block cost, you can take off this glyph and swap it on over to Magicka Recovery or Spell Damage. I don't, because again, all my CP stuff doesn't matter if I'm fighting in Silthasil or like any no CP area. So again, keep that in mind. You can swap it on out. For any leftover points that you guys might have that I'm not, there's no point really in Befoul. The only way that we're going to ever befoul anybody in this build, or Major Defile them, is if our Kalurians set gives us a Disease Ball. So it says in here, when you deal critical damage with a single target Magicka ability, you launch Fire, Ice, Shock, or Disease at your target, hits them for a chunk of damage, and it applies a status effect. If you hit them with Disease, it will apply Major Defile for like 5 seconds. I think Shock gives minor maim, Fire gives them a dot, Ice is like a big slow. So those are just kind of extra benefits you can get from that, but if I had leftover points, I would probably put, again, Warlord I would definitely have at 56, if not more. I might even go 71 on Warlord. Mooncalf is actually not bad. Because we have 700 stamina recovery, if we buff this up a little bit, it would be more stamina that we would get back when we're popping in Mist, where our stamina's starting to dwindle a little bit. We're looking for different ways to stay alive. You pop Mist, move around a little bit, your stamina would tick up a little. So, again, if I could, I probably would. I never really roll dodge in this build. If you have extra points and you guys like to roll dodge a little bit, go ahead and do it. Totally fine. To me, I would rather sit there and get stuck in one spot blocking and just mitigate all that amount of damage than spending a huge chunk of stamina roll dodging away. Again, it depends on your situation though. If you don't like running Mist and you do find yourself rolling a lot, go ahead and buff that up if you have it. I would probably put some points in here. I just probably wouldn't put a whole lot. Moving on over to our damage trees. For this build, because we're so focused on just pushing damage, and we have so many different damage over times, this is pretty much a go-to for almost any Magicka damage like setup that anyone can basically ever run. If you have a decent amount of crit, you've got to have Elfborn up there. We have 49.1% spell crit, so every other skill that we ever use, every single damage tick has a 50-50 shot on being a crit, so this is definitely got to be a 56. Elemental Expert, I would buff that a little bit up. I don't have the points for it right now. I would probably buff this up last, surprisingly, just because we have so many different damage over times, and I'd probably prefer buffing those up a little bit more. I would not actually put anything into Spell Erosion for this. You can if you want to, again, totally feel free. Blessed, I leave it alone because like 0.3 of 1% does not scale amazingly. We're already Argonian, so we're already getting a little bit of free extra heals, so it's whatever. In this tree, we've got Master at Arms at 56. In my opinion, this should be 56 no matter what class you're playing in the game, unless you're like just basically I do the assist back and heals. Like 20% extra damage on every single direct damage attack is it's a pretty big deal. This buffs our whip, this buffs the original tick on Burning Embers, this buffs our Dragon Leap by 20%. Super necessary. There's no reason not to grab that. Over in this tree, I would put 75 into Thaumaturge. I don't have the points yet. Once you have 75 in here, you get the Exploiter passive, which increases the damage done against off-balance enemies by 10%. Anytime you root them, because remember, you're going to want to root people and then whip them twice. Again, this will turn into Power Lash. It doesn't on this dummy, but you hit them that second time and you'll basically backhand your whip, and that can only happen if they're off balance to begin with. So if you root someone and hit them with a whip, that throws them off balance. If you fossilize someone, boom, that throws them off balance. So people that you're fighting are going to be constantly off balance. That's an extra 10% damage boost on everything. Because we have 7 different damage over times, there's no reason not to have Thaumaturge at 75%. Anything that you have left over after putting 75 in that, I would say probably buff up your Elemental Expert. I threw 15% into this because like that first little bit doesn't like scale really too bad. I'll definitely do more once I get the other points for it. In our red trees, 56 and Ironclad. This is, in my honest opinion, the most like important CP that there is in the entire game. 20% off of direct damage attacks. Since everybody puts 56 at least into what the hell is it? Master at Arms. Because everyone basically puts 56 into this, you have got to put 56 into this to defend yourself against the 20% increase that they're getting. If you don't do this, basically everyone in the game is going to hit you for 20% harder than you're hitting them, which is really shit. 38 into Resistance. I might buff that up more if I had the points for it. Right now I don't, because I just don't. We have no impen, so again, if some Nightblade runs up on you and they fear you and you're not fast and like breaking the CC and getting your shield, you're blocking again, you're gonna get hit really fucking hard. You're in light armor, your resistances are not terrible, but it's still gonna hurt. So if you want to dump more points into this, you totally can. Usually I've got enough PvP experience where if someone CCs me, I'm instantly breaking it, and I'm either misting off to the side to screw up their rotation, or I'm already applying embers to try and heal back up, or whatever. So I so far haven't had a need to run more than that, but I would. In here, I would probably run, if you had the points for it, I would run probably like 56 into this, and maybe 41 into both of these. I don't, so again, I don't. But if I had more points, I would definitely throw them in. These 3 are like the main go-to survivability CP points in the entire game. This reduces your damage taken from damage over time effects, which is a lot. Stamina Sorcerers will chop you up if you don't have any points into this. Here you've got Hardy, reduces your damage taken from physical, poison, and disease. That's basically every single skill a Nightblade will ever use on you. I would get these buffed up quite a bit more. This one scales better than these, which is why like you can, I don't know. Personally, I've buffed the damage over times more. Like I would buff this more than I would do these two, because damage over times you can't block, and we rely on block. So I would do 56 in this, and I do 41 in each of these. This last one reduces your damage taken from Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage. Every Sorcerer or Dragon Knight, this is basically all of their damage. So that's kind of how I've got stuff set up. In here, I don't really run anything. Our resistances are decent enough where like I wouldn't put any into like light armor focus. You can if you want. I just don't. Quick recovery, again, it's only 0.3% that it's scaling off of. If I had a different build that like really, you know, relied on Coag or like a really good Dragon Blood, then I would probably do that. Again, I don't run Igneous Shield because in my opinion you get more of a heal out of just popping this twice than you do doing Igneous and then running Coagulating Blood. I'll show a couple PvP clips here real quick so you can kind of see the amount of burst that you get from this build in Cyrodiil. They're just a couple kills that I've got. I'm planning on changing my build here in a second to just go to like a random tank, so you know, whatever, but let me know what you guys think about it. I've played a lot of Magicka Dragonknight, like a lot of Magicka Dragonknight. It's the class that I fucking love. They've tried over and over and over to try to break the class, and every single time we'd find a way to get it back up. So a ridiculous amount of damage, a ridiculous amount of crowd control, a ridiculous amount of burst. You've got free damage coming out the ass. You've got this, which is every 5 seconds going to shoot something at someone. Whoever you're closest to, it's going to nuke them. If that crits, your Caelerians is going to hit them. That was 12k, and PvP is going to be about 6k. There's Scorias for 8.5k. My Fireball just shot another thing over there for 7k. There's another 4k. Your Leap's on top of that. There's 10k. There's another 8.5k. I'm not even doing anything, and this damage is just flooding all over the place. So when you have all of your different damage over times on someone at the same time, you're going to have a lot of pressure for them to deal with. Right here I would Fossilize, whip them a few times. We have enough Magicka recovery in this build to be able to sustain our damage for quite a bit. 1600 is, a lot of people kind of think like not really that great, but because we have this reduced block cost on here, or excuse me, our reduced spell cost, and again you could even put another Magicka recovery right here if you wanted to, and because we're Argonian, anytime I drink a potion, like let me show you, let me just drain the shit out of my Magicka real quick. So again, we've got like 34,000 Magicka. Right out here, if I pop a potion, it just gave me about, you know, 40% of it back by hitting one button. And now our recovery is back up. It's 1851. So that if you want to have more, you can. I just don't personally find that it's needed, and I choose to have my stuff run in either more damage or more survivability. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Like the video. I don't really do build videos that often. This is the first time I've ever done one, so again, all of your feedback is really appreciated. Got any other tips to let other people know about, go ahead. But again, I am Lotus of Flame, and this was the Firecracker. Enjoy.
I've been looking for a way